Now, let's try to understand this concept of game theory, which plays a very important role in oligopoly. Right? Especially when I am talking about non-collusive kind of oligopoly, the game theory plays a very important role. What does this game theory talk about? I try to make some kind of assumption about the behavior of my rivals, of my competitors. What what strategy they are going to adopt, how they are going to make their decisions. So based on some assumption of the behavior of my rivals, I try to design a strategy. I try to identify what are the various alternative strategies that are available for me, and based on that evaluation of various alternatives, I try to see what is the best strategy for me to adopt under the assumption that my rival or an opponent is going to go either with a strategy X or strategy Y. I would like to see, okay, what is the benefit or loss for me if I go with a strategy A versus if I go with a strategy B. So this is typically what goes as a game theory. So it's just like a game. If my opponent moves X, would I be better off if I go with A or B? If my opponent goes with a step Y, is it better for me to go with A or B? In which case, which one is better? So overall, should I choose a strategy A or strategy B as a part of my pricing or whatever may be the strategy here, right? So that is what is driving the world of game theory. And what we simply say is there are two major categories. One, there are a single move games, which means one player will just do one strategy. That's it. It's not a series. But when I'm talking about multiplayer strategies or multi-stage strategies, it is like, or multiple move strategies. It's like it's a series of strategies. Okay, just like a game of chess. A player A follows a strategy X. Then if I follow A, the player B, now will he stick to X or will he change to Y? It goes purely like a kind of a game of chess. But in a single move games, it's more and more like only one move is made by each player. So think of it like, okay, if the opponent has increased the price, if the competitor has increased the price, would I be better off if I increase the price? Would I be better off if I decrease the price? Would I be better off if I don't change the price? Which one would be a better strategy? Similarly, when my opponent is decreasing the price, would I be better off by increasing the price or by decreasing the price or by staying constant? So this kind of assessment is what is coming through a game theory. And here it is like, okay, the opponent will do one of these and now I have to react with one of these, which means each player is going with only one. And traditionally, the two kinds of approaches that come in terms of addressing it. One, if the firm is very, very risk averse, if the firm is more and more cautious, the strategy that it will follow is called as a Maxi Min Strategy. What it simply says is, whatever is the minimum payoff that they are getting, they would like to maximize the minimum payoffs. Maximize the minimum payoff, and that strategy would be adopted. Probably I would talk about this example. Let me explain it. Now let's say there is a firm A and firm B. They are trying to evaluate. Now it means like, if the firm A, or look at it from the firm B's perspective. If the firm B increases the price, sets a high price. The payoff for firm A, if it sets a high price, is $6. A would benefit by $6. But if it sets a low price, let's say it will benefit by $8. And on the other side, if B has decreased the price, if A increases the price, let's say the benefit is $2. Whereas if A decreases the price, let's say the benefit is going to be $4. This is what are the payoffs corresponding to B's strategy. Now look at it from B's perspective. If A sets a high price, B thinks if B also sets a high, B will get a benefit of 4. But if B decreases the price, it is going to get a benefit of 6. Whereas on the other side, if A sets a low price, if B sets a high price, the benefit is going to be 0. And if B sets a low price, the benefit is going to be 2. So this is the meaning of this matrix. Now what I am typically trying to do as a part of my Maxi Min strategy. Let me look at a Maxi Min strategy from A's perspective. Okay. Let's say B is setting a high price. If B is setting a high price, look at A's strategies. For A, there are two possibilities. He can set either a high or a low. If he sets a high, his payoff is 6. If the firm A sets a low, the payoff is 8. So the minimum payoff that A is going to get is 6 in this strategy. The minimum payoff is 6. Okay. And let's say if I am talking about a B, let's say B set a low. If B is setting a low, right? If B is setting a low, I'm looking at what is the minimum payoff. If A sets a high, the payoff for A is 2. Whereas if A sets a low, the payoff is going to be 4. Right? So again, if I'm looking at, okay, what is the maximum payoff here? The maximum payoff is 8. Here the maximum payoff is 4. The minimum of the maximum payoffs, what is that it is coming? It is this. And when A sets a low strategy, I mean when A is decreasing the price, in this case also for A the low is the better, and in this case also for A low is better, which means irrespective of the strategy that is followed by B, if A follows a low, that would give him a much better payoff. Now look at it from B's perspective. Let's say A is setting a high price. Now for B, either the payoff is 4 or 6, right? So the maximum payoff comes when he is setting a low. Similarly, if A is setting a low, the payoff for B is 0 when he sets a high and 2 when he sets a low. So again, the maximum payoff is going to be low itself, which means again the maximum of this, right, or the minimum of this is 2, which means again irrespective of A, whatever the A sets, for B if he is setting a low, because in both the cases if B sets a low, that is going to be the that is going to give him a better payoff corresponding rather than A, rather than high. If B sets a low, that is, which means overall it is looking like A has to set a low price and B also has to set a low price. That will give the benefit to both irrespective of what the others are doing. So this kind of a strategy is called as a dominant strategy, because all the possible approaches are leading to the same. Here this is called as a Maxi Min. I am trying to look at the maximum of each one of them and out of all the possible things that are coming, I'm choosing the minimum of those payoffs, and that is the strategy that I'm following. And it is resulting like it would be better off if A and B, both of them will go with low and low. That's a cautious approach. Now let's look at an aggressive approach here. Okay, from A's perspective, if B is high, right? If B is setting high, the A's payoffs are either 6 or 8. So the highest payoff comes 8, which is when he is setting a low. Similarly, if B is setting low, A will get either 2 or 4. Again, the highest payoff comes 4, which is on a low. Now, if A is aggressive, then the strategy that he is going to follow again is, the Maxi Max. The Maxi Max is telling me take the maximum payoff of the various maximums that are coming. Out of 8 and 4, I'm going with 8, which means still there is a low only. That is the strategy. Similarly, look at from B's standpoint, if A has set high, the B's payoff maximum is 6. If A has set low, B's payoff maximum is 2. Again, these two are coming only during a low strategy for B, which means again if I am talking of Maxi Max, the payoff is going to be 6, which is again with the strategy low, which means both of them, if they set low strategy, that would be the most optimum strategy. Even if the firm is very optimistic, or even if the firm is very cautious, or any other strategy I can plan off, I could see that in a Maxi Max, we are looking at the policy with the best possible outcome. So out of this 6 and 2, I am looking out for the best. Out of this 4 and 8, I am looking out for the best. So probably if I look at it like this, from A's perspective, this is the best. So he has to follow a low strategy. From B's perspective, this is the best, which means he has to follow a low strategy. So that is the best possible outcome. That is what an optimistic firm strategy will be. Whereas from a cautious, it is looking at the maximization of the minimum possible output. Right? So in both, because both these strategies are leading to the same strategy, both these approaches are leading to the selection of the same strategy. This is called as a dominant strategy game. In some cases, this might not be possible, but yes, in this case, at least it is coming out that it is a dominant strategy game, which means for a particular firm, whatever is the alternative that I am looking at, the best strategy is this strategy only, whether it is more cautious, more aggressive, whatever it is, no matter what the other firm typically follows. If a particular firm is taking up a particular strategy, that becomes the most dominant strategy. And this equilibrium, this typical strategy, this typical outcome is called as a dominant equilibrium. This is one decent understanding of the game theory that is expected. Especially if a dominant equilibrium is existing, that strategy is the most preferred strategy by the various rivals. But in some cases, what could happen? Okay, let's try out this. I think from there we'll try to understand what is this Nash equilibrium. Let's look at from B's perspective, from A's perspective first. Okay, B has set a high price. What are the payoffs for A? He'll get either 0 or 80, the payoffs. So the highest payoff is 80, which means if I go with a Maxi Min kind of an approach, whatever it is, initially when he is setting a low, he is getting a high payoff. Okay, let's say B is following a low strategy. Then from A's perspective, his payoff is minus 10 or minus 50. So minus 10 is the highest. So it's better that A has to set a high. So in one case, low is looking better. In the other case, high is looking better. So which means it's not that universally A will adopt either a high price or a low price. Okay, look at it from B's perspective now. Let's say if A has set a high, what are the payoffs for B? 0, 80. So which means the payoff for B is 80 is the highest here, especially when he is following a low strategy. Now if if A has set a low price, what are the payoffs for B? He'll get either a minus 10 or a minus 50. So minus 10 is the best payoff, that too when he is setting a high price. Which means again from B's perspective also there is not one dominating strategy. So this strategy is looking like if A is going for a high price, B has to go with a low price. And if A is going with a low price, B has to go with a high price. Which means here there is no dominant strategy, but A directly cannot go to low. If he is going to low without B changing to high, A is going to lose out. Right? Similarly, B cannot go to high without A changing to low, which means B has to be there in low itself if A is in high and vice versa. Otherwise, they are losing out very badly. Means, though there is no dominant equilibrium position here, A is better off purely acting opposite to that of B and vice versa. They cannot improve their payoff in isolation. They have to work together to increase their payoff. So the Maxi Min strategy is not giving me anything, right? If I'm going, okay, if I'm looking at the Maxi Min here, okay, the maximum are 80 and minus 10. So the minimum is telling me that A has to go with a low. And this is telling me again the maximum of the minimum of these is telling me that B has to go with a high. So Maxi Min strategy is saying that A has to go with a low and B has to go with a high. But look at Maxi Max. Maxi Max will suggest that A has to go with a low, B has to go with a high, which means two different strategies are giving me two different outputs, which means there is no dominant equilibrium in this case. But we say there is what is called as a Nash equilibrium. Right? Dominant equilibrium is not there, but we say that there is a Nash equilibrium in this example. Why are we saying that? Okay, here also we are making the decision based on the rival's decisions itself. But what is happening is, though there is no dominant equilibrium, there is no way any firm can improve its payoff without the other firm really responding to it. So, without B changing the price, A cannot change its price. Without A changing the price, B cannot change its price. That kind of an equilibrium we call as Nash equilibrium, which means dynamic whatever is the dominant equilibrium, it's always a subset of Nash equilibrium, which means all dominant equilibriums are Nash equilibriums, but need not be the case that all Nash equilibriums are dominant equilibrium. Even without a dominant equilibrium, just like this example, there could be a Nash equilibrium. So none of the firms will have any kind of an advantage if it moves, if it makes a move, if it changes its strategy without the other one responding to it, which means there is no incentive for any of the firms to change their current positions. Right? But that is not the best outcome. Again, if both of them can come together, they negotiate with each other, and based on that they can very well come out with a dominant equilibrium which can come out to be the best. But here the way out for them is they have to really work out in collusion there. Without collusion, probably the strategy that is coming out is no one can really change without the other, and that may not be the best for both the firms. And this is where one more game that typically comes in is the question of prisoner's dilemma. Just like a prisoner where he really thinks, okay, probably it's like this. Let's assume there are two prisoners X and Y. Right? Probably the question comes like this. There are two prisoners X and Y. Now, let's say both of them are there in the prison. Uh, an interrogation happens. Probably questions are being put to Y. Right? Probably it's like this. Let's say the questions are being put to Y about X, and question is being put to X about Y. So the question asked for Y is, did X do the fraud? So for him the answers available are yes or no. If he says X has done the fraud, probably X is going to get some punishment, and Y is going to be better off. Or if he says Y, see, he will ask, did X fraud? If X has frauded, X will get a punishment, and if he says no, X will not get the punishment. Similarly, a question will be asked to X, did Y do the fraud? Now, if X says yes, then Y will get the punishment. Otherwise, Y will not get. If he says no, then Y will not get the punishment. What would have been the best strategy here? If Y says no and X also says no, both of them will be better off. That would have been a collusive solution. Y will say, if the question is, did X fraud? If Y says no, and if the question is put to X, did Y fraud? And if the answer is no, both of them will get a much lesser punishment. But if there is a scenario like both of them initially agree that they will say no, but if it so happens that if the question is asked to Y, did X fraud, this guy says yes, whereas this guy sticks to his no, there is a good chance that X will get a very high punishment and Y will be completely off punishment. So, which could very well result in an incentive to cheat. Why should I get even a lesser punishment? If I fraud, there is a chance that I will get out. Because if I say X has frauded, but Y X says Y did not fraud, then it's a very clear intention that Y would be released immediately. So Y thinks there is a possibility, there is an incentive for me to cheat. So why not cheat? Probably the same thing which X may also do. So which means at the end it may so happen that both of them will say that both of them have, this guy feels that there is an incentive to cheat. This guy also feels there is an incentive to cheat. Both think of cheating. Both will say yes instead of both saying no, which means both end up getting a higher punishment. Whereas if they have really colluded and they have trusted each other, both would have got a much lesser punishment. This is what traditionally happens even in an oligopolistic world. Firm X and firm Y, they really get into an understanding that we will not decrease the price. Right? As long as they maintain their profits are much higher. But somewhere there could be a possibility that X will have an intention to cheat. X thinks, let me drop the price. Then all the customers from Y, X is going to get, and Y will get winded out of the business, wiped out of the business. So with that kind of an intention, X may suddenly drastically drop the price. The same intention Y could have, which means at the end, in an intention to cheat, both the companies will actually drastically reduce their price, which will be beneficial to the customers, but both the firms will be worse off. So this is what is a situation of prisoner's dilemma. It's a scenario under which when I am talking about two or more firms, they choose that they want to independently choose the best strategy based on what others are following, and they really don't trust the other party and end up in a position which is much worse than if they have really cooperated at the beginning. So if they have colluded and stuck to the collusion rather than cheating, there is a very high incentive to cheat there. So if they have colluded without cheating each other, they could have ended in a much better solution. But with the cheating, both of them can go much worse off. That is what is the situation which a prisoner's dilemma brings into the picture. And at the same time, apart from various individual move games, we talk about multiple move games. So they talk about a series of movements by each player based on the step 1 of A. B will do a step 1. Then based on the step 1 of B, A will do a step 2. So it's a kind of series of movements. It's a kind of responding to the various actions, just like for a tit for tat kind of scenario. When one firm cuts the price, probably the rival may respond to it, and if the rival responds, again this firm may cut down altogether. So in some cases, it may so happen that until this guy cuts, this guy will not respond. But once this guy cuts, even this guy may respond with a higher cut. Again, this person may respond. So it goes with a kind of a series of steps coming up. And in some cases, there is a possibility of a decision tree where the timing of the decisions is very much important. A first mover advantage. I want to be the first one to take the action. So in a decision tree, we talk about a series of decisions. Okay, if A has taken this particular decision, this is the payoff for B. Now, if B has taken a particular decision, this is what A could respond with. So, a kind of a decision tree which talks about series of possible decisions by all the competitor firms along with the kind of payoffs that are associated with each of these decisions. But it becomes more and more complex if I am having too many firms and too many decisions that are possible to be taken by each of these firms. But yes, with a proper algorithm planned out, and at the same time, you have to really compute the expected payoffs in each of them. So it becomes a very complex exercise. But yes, having a proper algorithm in place, proper planning in place, this gives the most optimal kind of solution. And anytime in this oligopolistic world, it's always better to look at the game theory perspective because there are lots of advantages that it brings in. It looks at the different scenarios, right? So it can think of all possible moves which the opponent can typically take, and based on the different moves and different strategies which are chosen by the opponent, the final solution comes out, the final response comes out. So whatever the actual thing which the rival or the competitor is going to take, we have the solution for that in the beginning itself. But of course, here, as I said, lots and lots of calculations of expected values, the payoffs, profits in each scenario needs to be computed. So if the scenario is very complex, probably they may not be considered as a part of the model itself. So some amount of limitation in terms of simplicity versus complexity versus accuracy is something that needs that plays a key role here. And here we also need to look at from the behaviors perspective. It's not okay today if the opponent or if the competitor has reduced the price, it need not be the case that forever he will follow that strategy. He may not reduce the price at all. His behavioral approach might change with time. That makes the model much more complicated. There is a lot of subjectivity angle that I need to bring in. So in one period, probably he may be very aggressive. In the other period, he may become more conservative. So those kind of dynamic behavioral changes also need to be accounted as a part of the model. So though on one side it gives some kind of an advantage, but we need to understand the limitations of the model as well. But overall, what I would like to drive is game theory as a tool is really powerful as far as the decision making is concerned, and it needs to be understood very well in the context of oligopolistic behavior in the firms. All right.